friends, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well today. I am so thrilled to be here to be starting a brand new series here on my channel that I cannot wait to share with you. A few months back, I was on the Vintage Sewing Pattern wiki page just scrolling around looking for different things, and I started to come across vintage sewing patterns that were related specifically to Disney movies going all the way back to the really early days of Disney in 1933. And I thought this was just super fascinating because I'd not seen much information about these patterns before, so I wondered how readily available the vintage patterns were on the secondhand market, and I started looking on eBay and creating a little collection for myself. So this summer, my project is to start sewing through these patterns, researching them, and sharing them with you all. And I just can't wait to dive in. I'm so excited because this really appeals to my love of old Hollywood, of vintage, and of sewing all rolled into one here. And of course, a little sprinkling of Disney magic. So I can't wait to share all of the projects with you all. We are starting off with the oldest one in my collection so far, which comes from 1938, and it was specifically brought out for the release of the movie Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And here is the jacket for the pattern that we're going to be making. I just think this is so precious and magical. I love the pastel look here on the front. The pattern has two views. One is for a costume and then one is for a party dress. And yes, this is in a child size and I'm just going to be making it as it is. I am not adapting this to adult sizes, but I'm just so excited to see how it looks and how it turns out and share all the details with you along the way. So first, let me show you the fabric that I've picked out to make the little costume out of. Now, I went back and forth with my fabrics several times because this pattern coming from the 1930s had me wanting to make this in a beautiful rayon satin or a silk, but honestly, it was just too expensive to find the right materials that would be true to the time period. And you'll find out later, but I'm planning to give this away to one of you who has a little girl in this size. And so I want it to be easy to care for and wash and clean and wear for fun and all of those things. So all that to say, we went for poly satin from Mood Fabrics. Now the color scheme was another thing to try and decide about. Because the pattern illustrations really do look pastel, some of that is the fading, but I also think some of that is a stylistic choice. And I really want to capture that kind of faded essence while still keeping it fun for a little girl. One thing that I've really appreciated about the pattern is that it does give you the specific fabric amounts for each little element of it. So you can see we have this soft yellow, blue, some green, and some pink. So here are the fabrics that I got. So one of the primary fabrics is going to be this soft yellow satin. I think this looks a little bit more pastel on the camera than it does in person. It has some saturation to it, but I think this is going to be the perfect base. Then for the bodice of the dress, we have this blue. This was not the exact blue that I wanted, but Mood was sold out of that one. And I think this one is going to work. It's got a little bit of softness to it, but still some saturation yet again. So I think this is going to be really pretty. And then for the cape, we have the green, which is kind of this sage color. And then it is lined in this beautiful pink satin, although I think my pink might be a little too bright. We're going to see as we go through the process, but I might need to tea dye this just so it has a little bit more of that muted tone that we're going for. And then one more fabric, because you will notice this kind of standing collar on Snow White's costume. So I got just a kind of cream colored organza, and this is going to make that collar kind of stand nice and stiff, hopefully. Okay, let me find the little clasp piece I have for the cape. So the cape is illustrated with a metal buckle at the neckline, so I wanted to find something vintage that would work, but I do need to lead test these, which I thought of after I got these from the antique store because we don't want to have any lead on this costume at all. This one though is such a gorgeous piece from the 20s or the 30s, and I found this at my local antique mall. They have this booth that has all kinds of vintage notions and findings. So if this does end up testing for lead, I might save it to use on a vintage dress myself that I will not be licking. And then this one I think has a higher probability of being the one that ends up getting used because it's not quite as old. It's just a little rhinestone buckle. So I have those to look at and work with to add a little bit of detail, which I think will be really pretty. Now, because this pattern is rare and old, I will not be cutting into it at all. I'm just going to trace everything off so that it's preserved and make sure that everything stays safe. But I'm super excited to start cutting out the dress today. I just can't wait to see how this comes together. I'm also curious about the size because this is the smallest size, so I think it's going to be so cute and little. So I'm so excited to see. I always love reading old sewing instructions because they're just so different than how they'd be worded today. Okay, I cut out a couple of pieces just to test my method and make sure I like it. And I'm just tracing these pattern pieces directly onto the fabric with a pencil, and it's working really well so far. That means I don't have to put any wear on the pattern, and I can just fold these up and preserve them for later. Eventually I will trace them all out so they have a separate copy, but for now just tracing them to the fabric. So I have a couple of pieces so far. Here's the bodice front. They're so tiny and cute. the bodice back, and then the sleeve linings. And now I'm going to move on to the yellow fabric. There are all of our sleeve facings. There's that outer sleeve. Okay, everything is cut out. I've got all of the dress pieces as well as the cape. The cape is really simple. It's just the cape piece and the lining. And then there's a collar for the dress that I cut out as well. And then we've got this inner and outer sleeve kind of situation here. I just laid everything out so we can kind of get an idea of what the final dress will look like. I cannot wait to see this stitched together, but that will be another day's work, and I'm going to fold everything up and put the pattern back in its jacket and get everything put away and ready to sew next time I'm in the sewing room. Alright, hi friends, it is a few days later and I am officially ready to get started sewing the Snow White dress. I cannot wait to see how this goes together today. I have brought out the heavy duty machinery today. I've borrowed my mom's serger because I feel like with this polyester satin it's going to fray a lot, so this is definitely seeming like a necessity today. But I wanted to ask you guys if you have any good recommendations for a serger, because I don't own one and I am in the market to get one. This one I love, but it's no longer produced, so I would love to know if you have one that you just love that is working out really well for you. Please let me know, because I am going to try and get one at some point this year. But yeah, I cannot wait to get started sewing this today. I just had a little bit of an afternoon coffee pick-me-up, and the sun is actually coming out. It was rainy this morning, but it's starting to look like a sunny day, which is re-energizing me to get some sewing done. One exciting thing this week, I actually found another pattern from the release of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I found this on eBay, and this one was such a treasure hunt, you guys, because I had no record that this existed, but I found an advertisement in a really old issue of the McCall's pattern catalog from the 1930s, and there was just a little black and white picture of the dopey costume, and I thought, I need to hunt that down, but I couldn't find anything on Google. But then finally one day it popped up on eBay for $25, so I added it to the collection. So now I have the matching set, the little boy's costume and the little girl's costume. I think they are just darling. Look at this illustration of the Seven Dwarfs down here. How freaking cute. So I'm so excited to have this in the pattern collection too. And here's the two of them together, both from 1938. I think I'm going to frame these. I don't know if I'll scan them and copy them and print that to frame, but I would love to have these as a framed set of artwork. Also, side note, I really love my dress today. This is not handmade. This is actually from Aerie. So if you're looking for a comfortable, cute summer dress, I have been really impressed with the quality on this one. It's a really flowy rayon and just so lightweight, and I've been enjoying wearing it so much this summer so far, so I will link to it in case you're interested. Love the polka dots too, very retro. All right, let's get sewing. So I'm just reading through the instructions, and the first thing I need to do is gather the side of the bodice front. I didn't even notice this detail, and then I was looking more closely at the pattern illustration. You can see there's just a little bit of gathering at the waistline, which I think is a really sweet detail. So I'll add that in first, and then we'll sew the shoulder seams of the bodice pieces together. So super excited to see how this goes. Now, because there are so many colors involved in this project, I have opted just to use white serger thread, and hopefully it won't be too noticeable. I know it's going to stand out on the colors, but I think it'll be okay. And I'm just going to press these shoulder seams now. Being very careful not to have my iron too hot. I remember my mom made me a dress for my birthday when I was maybe 10 or 11, and I went to iron it, and it had a satin sash, and I melted it, and she had just given it to me. And then she was so creative and added little ribbon roses over the top to cover up the place where I melted it. But I felt so bad because she had worked so hard on it. So I'm trying not to repeat that again here with the satin today. Okay, the shoulder seams are stitched up and pressed, and now I can pull up these gathering threads at the side seams and adjust the front to fit the back. I think this will look really cool with the basque waist as well. I'm excited to see how this stitches up. I'm going to go ahead and press and set these gathers in place a little bit before I stitch. I just feel like that's going to make it look a little bit neater as it's stitched into the seam. I think that's such a pretty detail you really wouldn't see on a modern pattern as much. And now I can just pin and sew the side seams. Y'all, why did I stitch both side seams? One of these needs to be open for the closure on the side, so let me rip this out. All right, that is the basic construction on the bodice done, so now I can move on to stitching all of the skirt panels together. These are pretty much just rectangles, but the front piece does dip in the middle to incorporate that basque waist. Okay, I've stitched all of the panels together for the skirt, and actually, as I was looking at the pattern, I realized you're meant to cut a slash in the back panel rather than leave any of the seam open, so that's a little bit different. It's interesting to see all of these details and how different they are on the vintage patterns and where they're indicated, because that's only written on the pattern piece. But now I can go ahead and gather the top of this, and then it's exciting because then it'll be time to add this to the bodice and see how they look together. And now with all of those gathers stitched in place, I can start to adjust the skirt to fit to the bodice. There's quite a lot of fabric in this skirt, and I was just thinking at the time this pattern came out in 1938, this would have been such a luxury. What is it, Coconut? Is it the squirrels on the roof? I know, they're just taunting you. Okay, now this is a little bit interesting. The pattern wants you to do a lapped seam where you fold this edge under and then top stitch across. I think though, because I want to be able to serge everything on the inside, I am just going to stitch this like I normally would with the right sides together. I can always come back and top stitch to give it the same look, but I think because of modern finishing on the inside of a garment, it will be better to do it this way just to make it practical. I'm actually going to do this in 2 steps. I'm going to pin these pieces together, and then once I have the gathers adjusted where they need to be, I'm going to unpin it so that I can press these gathers into place. I just find that that stitches together a lot better on a satin fabric like this. Cute. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the bodice is now stitched to the skirt. I went ahead and top stitched around the waistline too, just to give it a little bit more reinforcement. And now I can go ahead and move on to adding the collar. Now the collar is just made up of these 2 pieces that will be stitched together, and then this gets stitched to the back of the neckline, and then the whole neckline gets finished off with bias binding. So pretty straightforward. I'm just going to stitch these together to start. So I just quickly stitched the collar pieces together, turned them right side out and pressed them, and now I can match this up along the neckline of the dress. And this is pretty simple. It just goes from one notch on one side to a notch on the other side. And then after I baste this on, I will finish this neckline off with some bias tape. I'll just make the bias tape from the same blue satin so that everything is cohesive. I do feel like this is where it's really starting to look more like Snow White and not just a yellow and blue dress. All right, I'm gonna baste that down really quickly. So I just stitched the bias tape all around the edge of the neckline, and then I went ahead and understitched it. I think this is going to look so neat from the inside. I love something that looks so clean like this. Okay, I have just been putting together one of the sleeves because I wanted to kind of test run it before I show you how it works, because it's a little bit complex, and I need to head out now to meet my friend for dinner, but I'll come back a little bit later and hopefully finish the sleeves tonight. All right, hi friends, it is day 2 of the Snow White dress project, and I made a couple of changes while I was working on this earlier today. One thing I did was I redid the collar and added interfacing to both layers, and I just feel like that gives it a little bit more of a substantial feel. and it's going to look more like a true Snow White style when it's done. And then I've gone ahead and test run the first sleeve so that I can show you how this goes together on the second sleeve. So now for the dress, all we have to do is add the sleeve, the side closures, and the hem, and it's really starting to take shape. But let me show you how I put the sleeve together. So the sleeves are made up of two pieces. We have the inner sleeve, which is the blue satin, and then the outer sleeve, it's the yellow with the slashes. So each of these slashes has a facing piece that gets turned to the inside so that you have a clean finish on the outside. And then these two pieces are layered together, so you have that double puffed sleeve with the blue peeking through. So let's put this together. So here are all of the little facing pieces. I've gone ahead and serged around the outer edge, so just so we don't have any fraying on the inside. And then these will get placed right sides together against the slashes in the sleeve, and all of this will be stitched in place and turned towards the inside. So I have the facing stitched down on the inside of the outer sleeve, and now what I'm going to do is add gathering stitches to the top of both the inner and outer sleeve, and then stitch the side seams on these. Okay, I have the gathering stitches put into the top of the sleeve. I'm going to press the underarm seam down, and then I can go ahead and narrow hem this part of the sleeve. Okay, so I've quickly gone ahead and hemmed the outer sleeve, and then I've added the gathering stitches to the lower edge of both the inner and outer sleeve. Now here is a section of the pattern that I think would probably be done differently today. I think it would be more likely that you would find this to have an elastic casing in the bottom of the sleeve today, or just attached elastic somehow. But back then it was just gathered, and so this is a little bit different. The pattern says to pull the gathering into 10 inches all the way around the sleeve, so that's what I'm going to do. I am thinking about coming back and adding a little bit of bias tape over the top of this section, just because I don't love the look of the stitching. I am using a slightly darker, quite darker thread. I liked the look of this gold over the top of the yellow, so it might look a little bit different. So I'll play around with it and see if I want to do that bias over the top, but it might look nice. So we'll see. Okay, now to put this together, it took me a little bit of engineering the first time. I'm starting by turning the outer sleeve wrong side out, and then overlapping the inner sleeve around that bottom edge with the side that will face the inside facing down. Now to stitch this, I'm actually going to turn it the other way around. And this way I can stitch across the yellow surface here so that I can make sure my placement is where I want it. All right, and now when I turn this to the inside, you can see the blue peeking through. So fun. So now I can just gather up the top gathers and set this into the armhole. Oh, such a cute little princess sleeve. So here's where we are at so far. I just stitched up the hem on the main part of the dress. I think it's looking so sweet and very much like a Snow White costume. I still have some detail to do on the sleeves as well as the side closure, and then of course the cape. So I'll come back tomorrow to work on the next part of the dress. I'm starting on the cape today, so we need to lead test these little vintage findings. It says to hold it for 2 minutes. All right, hi friends, I am back to working on the Snow White project today, and we are working on the cape today. I'm excited to put this together. It should be pretty simple. We just start by adding some darts to the outside and the lining before sewing the two pieces together. Now my lead test did test positive on the older of the two buckles, so we're going to be using the little round rhinestone one, which does not have lead, so I'm glad to know that it's safe to use. And yeah, I'm just gonna get started stitching all of this together. I can't wait to see how it looks. Now, if you are a connoisseur of Snow White's costume, you know that the original costume had a red and blue cape, but because the pattern is illustrated with pink and green, that's why I've chosen this, so I'm excited to see how it goes together. Now it's fit details like these darts in the cape that make this stand apart for me. I feel like if you were to find a pattern like this today for a kid's costume, it would just be a piece of fabric that you draped over the shoulders, but the lining, the darts, the pleats, everything are what make this so special, that attention to detail. And now I can just place the layers together with the right sides together and pin around the entire edge of the cape to stitch this together, just leaving the neck edge open. Add this bias binding to the neckline of the cape. Okay, off camera, I really quickly added these pleats in the front, which again, is such a cool construction feature, isn't it? Because that's going to create more shape over the shoulder. And now all I have left to do is to add the buckle. Okay, now for the buckle, here's what I'm going to do to make this easy for a little one to use. I'm going to thread the buckle through this side, and then I'll stitch that to the back and just use a snap to secure it in front. All right, friends, so you can see the cape is pretty much done. I just hung it up here with the dress to get an idea of how it's going to look. I just need to get some snaps to do all of the final closures, and then this dress will be done. So I'm going to do that tomorrow, and I cannot wait to see how it all turns out. Coconut wants her own princess costume. All right, friends, I'm so excited that the Snow White costume is finished, and I really love the way it turned out. I feel like it was such a fun process to get to explore the different construction details involved in this pattern, and I just think it is so precious and adorable. So I've hung it up here on the wall so you can get a good visual of it, because unfortunately, I don't have anyone in my life to model this to show you. So I'm really excited to say that because of that, I am giving this away to one of you who has a daughter, granddaughter, or friend in the right size. For this, I will leave the sizing information in the description box, and if you'd like to enter the giveaway, you can leave a comment here on my YouTube channel. You can also head to my Instagram or my TikTok to enter the giveaway, and I will leave that running for 1 week, and then I'll select a winner, and I cannot wait to send it off to its rightful little princess owner. And it was just such a fun process to make, so I hope you enjoyed seeing it as well. If you enjoyed this video and you like the vintage Disney patterns, don't fear, because I have a whole collection of them and a lot more of this content headed your way that I can't wait to share. I really hope that you did enjoy this process. It was just such a fun new type of project for me, and I can't wait to do more. I'm thinking that the Winnie the Pooh plushies might be next, but I am running a poll over on Instagram and TikTok, so make sure to go vote if you'd like to have a say in what's next. But thank you so much for being here and spending your time on my channel today. Be sure to enter the giveaway if you like, and I really appreciate you watching my videos. If you are new to my channel and this is my first video to find you, you can subscribe by clicking the button down below. I would love to have you back for future videos. Lots of sewing content around here and hopefully a lot more Disney sewing content this summer. Thank you again so much for being here today, friends. I'll talk to you in a new video very soon. Bye!